What up? Welcome back. We're here again. This time, I too have my own fun hand thing I made out of some string and this amulet that Reed gave me many years ago. Cool, bro. So that was a fun conversation last time we talked. I'm excited to continue the narrative. Just real quickly before we get back into the story that we were talking about, which was super fucking engaging. I like this story of how you discovered fire logic. Just wanted to ask you, I was wondering this just for myself personally. Um, you said you are currently spending your time building tools. What does that look
Yes.
like? What does that mean? What is,
Oh boy. Okay. So the platform, like as the story comes out, it's going to be unfold as this emergent, a series of emergent properties from this little seed that builds a structure enough to then build higher structures off of it. And each time that it unfolds, it's going to unfold a different aspect of tool and explain what it is that I mean by those things. But just to paraphrase it nice and short, behavioral tools, this is the whole premise of fire logic, is to take principles of physics, principles of math, principles of art, and to find the bridges between them in the series of the communication of force in terms of where behavior fits into the circle of perception and then reaction, and how to design behaviors that are premised on these fundamental principles, these universal principles of behavior that exist in everything, that demonstrate what things grow and what things decay. And so if you build tools, little like patches for parts of your day-to-day behavior that are premised off of these immutable laws of physics that dictate what grows and what decays, then you have a structure of a guideline. It's a moral code. It amounts to
right.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying when you say you're defining tools. I'm curious what that actually looks like in practice.
Okay.
So are you sitting in your room? Are you meditating in a probability trance? Are you writing a lot? Are you just going through your day? What does your day consist of?
My day consists of about half chaos, half order. That I have this relationship with like my subconscious at this point that I listen to it just pretty much for the most part when it says move or sit still. And I know that whether it says move or sit still, that it's telling me work. So if I'm sitting still, it's doing sitting still work. If I'm moving, it's doing moving work. And so then it just becomes this thing of I am taking what I all right. Mastery of tools does not live in their absence, but mastery of weapons does. This is a universal principle that is something that you can take, and within the definitive framework of what is meant by those words, and you can apply it to any situation you're in to know how to react to certain conditions. What this means is that that everything within the framework of your experience is a tool by definition. A tool is a means of nonlinear force induction. How to build algorithms of behaviors of if this then that with material and force to cause change that one could not explicitly cause just with one's body. So if and this is rooted very heavily in like addiction, that I believe that people who have heavy addiction problems, say who join AA, if they say I'm a slave to this and they run from it, then that's not mastery of that tool.
I agree.
Mastery of tools does not live in its absence. Mastery of weapons does. So what I know about a tool, what I feel distinguishes a tool and a weapon, is that a tool has more than one application. Constantly, its intention is for a variety of uses. A weapon has one use. It's nonlinear and linear. It's multidimensional and single dimensional. And that says that a weapon that there's nothing in our experience that has only one dimension to it. Everything has multiple functions because everything's being shared by everything else. So everything has a different function for that than I do. So if I only treat something as if it has this one function to serve me, then that's a weapon I'm using against myself, because I'm not understanding how it's means of connecting to the wider world and causing greater effective change. So I'm limiting myself by engaging whatever framework it is in this term of a narrow framework of mind. And so for like, we can just use drugs for this instance. So
it's a good example. Drugs are great tools and great weapons of self-destruction.
Exactly. So like marijuana, used in an appropriate application, it can be very helpful. I feel I know for me, if overused, I use it as a means of triggering like a dopamine release to satisfy this natural urge I'm building in myself to be productive. And so I'm using it just to limit myself when I don't really want to go the 110%. And at the time I'll use some excuse. I'm going to keep doing it till I don't want to do it anymore. But that in this light, it becomes a weapon against myself because it becomes a means of limiting how I engage with my world. And so that would be a tool, is that phrase, to master your tools to not live in their absence, because it's something that will be prevalent. That will be relevant in every framework. Period.
So again, I'm curious how you're applying this in life. Are you going out and interacting with people and then applying your linguistic frameworks into interactions and conversations? Are you sitting alone in a room and just working with tasks of will? Are you what does this look like?
So as the story goes on, it's gonna tell a lot more about that like how this framework, this tool set was built, was very much including everything you just said. That it was as mastery through surrender. I was surrendering to the forces and the tides of my life, that like I was on these paths, that these projected futures, and I was just committing to them to play them out and see what actions got what result, so I could begin to categorize into like behavioral subsets of what generates general archetypes of output. And it was conversational for the most part. It was me interacting with random people, utilizing the basic tools that I started with, the very simple logic tools that guaranteed validity and cogency to a logical presentation, to an argument. And so as it went and I progressed, and conversationally I discovered that.
And are you consciously using your hand symbols right now? Like when you go to the cheek, is that one that means something to you?
It's half and half.
Half and half. Has it almost become unconscious that you do it as your thoughts are going there?
This is a prime example of when I say that I'm building tools throughout my day. What I'm doing is that I built this archetypal structure that I believe encompasses the entirety of the standard deviation of my cognition. And what that means is it has a structural center that's immutable, that I feel is structured around the laws, the entirety of the laws of physics, that has a fringe element that is expanding. So as I go through these things...
You just got really blurry on the camera for some reason. I don't know why. There you are.
As I go through these things, let's say 75% of them are conditioned, set, structured in the language. But the other 25% are adaptations that are just spontaneously generating. And I observe myself as I do, and I realize like when I do certain gestures, because they emerge from the framework of where my hand is for certain things. So if I'm here, I'm not just going to go do that. So if I'm here, I'm like, oh, what was I thinking and doing right when I did that gesture? And so I begin to correspond, what my subconscious is doing with that. And then I start to just train myself to lock into that.
That's fascinating.
and not only that, but I have to go and then check the structure of what it means in terms of the conjugations of the words expressed over the framework of the body to make sure that it aligns with the physics of the theory, as well as aligning with the physics of the martial art, as well as just aligning with the physics of the symbolism that's across it. So I have to make sure all these things are intertwined. That because if I begin to deviate, I'm generating a break in the entropic field that's going to allow energy to escape. It's going to be a convenient lie that I didn't check enough, and so therefore down the line it's going to cause structural invalidity in some point I have to make. So I have to triple 100 fucking everything needs to be systemically insured and then repeated and stress tested essentially to ensure that it doesn't break down when in these different communicative frameworks, so that I know that the tool is really this universal principle, because it needs to be tested in points of leverage. That when I'm in a framework where I have something that could distress me, that I like, oh, I have a tool I built for this, and may engage this tool and these other frameworks that I built around it and see what happens. And then that often displays where I have.
Okay, can I cut in real quick? I really want to get back to the story, but just one quick question. When you say you start to distress, what is that noticing of an application to apply a tool?
Distress. Well, are you familiar with the term ataraxia?
No.
It's Greek. It is the state of being.
So you notice a shifting in your state.
Well, no, ataraxia.
I did look up ataraxia, but please explain it for anyone who's listening.
Well, ataraxia is this perpetual state of bliss, essentially.
Yeah.
That it's not carelessness. It is structured carefree because of just the sacred valley. I guess just to keep it short. Heart of Stone is an expression of that. Wait, could you repeat your question one more time?
The sensation of distress, this shifting in your state that you begin to recognize that triggers you to apply a specific tool. What is that? These warning signs, these bells, these canaries.
So another framework for the tool, because it comes in these very simple structures that just have layer upon layer upon layer upon layer, framework layer put upon them, that it's accorded with elements: fire, water, air, earth, colors, and just frameworks of symbolism. That at this point, when I enter into a scenario,
you go to the cheek a lot. This one's a very common one.
This is going to be a ponder that essentially what I'm trying to do. I'm realizing this as we're talking about it. So thank you for this. I'm inverting from my artistic into my science. I'm decoding my symbolism along the formula of data compression that symbolism is, to express it into the linear formula to fit that framework. So that's what that is. It's, instead of from left to right, it's going from right to left in my hemispheres when I'm pondering.
I love you, Reed. I love you. I hope somebody's watching this and getting as much enjoyment out of it as I am. Okay, let's leave them there in suspense, and let's return. Or did you have a point you would like to finish?
Yes, because I just want to. I'll make it really quick. So the moral code, it breaks up into two frameworks: the code of the student and the code of the dead. And those have three behavioral principles that the three of them in tandem form the law. And so these three behavioral principles, which I won't go into detail, I'll just say very quickly, the principle of omega owl, the principle of inversion plus one, and the principle of the priority. They have their inversions. The principle of alpha and omega, the principle of inversion, and the principle of the progression. And so these are behavioral frameworks that I know that the moment I start doing a behavior that falls into the bottom three, that I am engaging in a distressive behavior pattern. because it's a deviation from the ones that expand. And so an alert comes up, and then it tells me to engage what tool, to turn what off, because it tells me what color fits in what framework of my experience. All right, now I'm done.
Beautiful, beautiful. So, used to be a normal guy. I mean, not like normal, but you were always an artist. You were always a dreamer. My fucking battery's gonna die on my headphones again. So yeah, just before we get into the story of how you got from someone who might be like your average everyday Joe who's a poet and a little creative to somebody who's designing their own systems of behavioral cognition for the purpose of, would optimization be a good word?
That's one step. The greater purpose will come to later. But yes, for the purpose of optimization.
Beautiful. Sure. We're going to get into the story 1 second, folks. I got to charge my headphones. I'll be right back. So we can keep it recording, but I'll just cut here.
Okay. How long you think?
Sorry, bro. I can't find my headphones. There's somewhere.
Okay.
Headphones! Without the technology, we're useless. I find myself getting distressed when the technology doesn't work how I want it to.
Yeah, that's a great example.
That definitely distresses me. There's few things that get me more distressed than when my tools don't work how I want them to.
Yeah.
And automated voice reception messages.
Mm-hmm. So, and a recent example of distress for me. So the last one of those amulets that was left, just like 2 weeks ago, the person I'm staying with out here lost it. You know, and like there's so much history and all this stuff tied into it.
A lot of attachment.
Yes.
It's a good test.
And just because it was the last one too, and like of all it was it. And it was just this immediate thing of stage 2, dancing the transients of now, of just immediate engagement. Like I could feel the precipice in front of me, and I just stepped right over it. I was just like, okay, cool. You know, that it's just.
That's beautiful. These headphones have to be somewhere, man.
Turtle.
And I'm not going to be able to listen until I find it. I mean, like, I had them on yesterday. I don't know where the fuck they could have gone. Headphones. It's a beautiful story. But then, like, when the headphones don't appear, what do? You know? you gotta find the headphones. It's like not find. Oh, I found them.
Oh,
booyah!
See, that's what you do. When you cannot find them, you find them.
And so it is. Booyakasha, we back, folks. We live and direct, headphones in full effect, spliff about to be sparked, and Reed is going to take us on a journey. All right, my friend, I got about an hour and 10 minutes. Let's go. Last time on Reed Smokes DMT. That's the Dragon Ball Z.
Well, we were
If you didn't catch it.
I didn't, but thank you. I was telling about the time that I died. The bone in the throat.
Yeah, and then you smoked DMT again, and you got the
Healed.
alignment and the level up. That was the second level up, specifically. I remember.
So that was a crucial turning point that closed that chapter. I just want to fill in just a little bit of uniqueness of before that part.
Okay.
Some of my experiences was like. As I was saying before, there was the ritual room, the room that I would go at night to sit in my position, do the stick, the warm up, to induct the experience of the night, the ritual beginning, do the DMT, and then emerge out into the world to go onto the property and explore the world that as it was now. And archetypically, sacred geometry was present in 95% of those experiences, but there were a couple that stood out with that was not the case. One in particular was, so I exit this door, and this is this burned out forest that's regrowing after a couple years that is now a neon chalk rainforest that's alive, that is like it was as if I was occupying both my world and another dimension that was drawn over my world in 3 dimensions with this neon chalk that was moving the breeze. I could hear animals, and like it was all these neon bright pastel colors, and I would see these trees growing around our cars, not through them, but around them, like to accommodate them, and I couldn't touch anything necessarily. Like if I were to even go to push towards it, it was almost as if it would go further away, you know. But it was there, it was everywhere, and it was just this 20 minutes of just wandering throughout this landscape, and the night that was just, all it was these living pastels. That was pretty remarkable. I as well had taken upon myself to be a missionary to spread this to as many people as possible. And so I was going through every acquaintance I could find, and as I was doing so, and the aura and mystery for me was building, with each person I very early on come up with this exercise, this tool I call erasing the blackboard. And how it works is that it's meant to be a means of burning the bridge, of severing ties with preconditioned narratives that compel people because they're maintaining and supporting this narrative, that in order for their narrative to be true, they have to maintain these behaviors that don't serve them. So erasing the blackboard is the idea that in your head there's this infinitely large blackboard, and on it is written every quantum computation of possibility that could have ever have told the story of you, that everything you ever could have possibly decided, every molecule in every position, structuring the entire framework of every story that could have ever been conceived of you, that it is you in your quantum state, that if it were to be erased, you would die. Now we erase it. Get all that stuff gone. And now, in its place, write a word. The word, if you can. If not the, a, that is the definitive aspect of your existence. A principle. Something that if you can boil it down to one word, becomes the thing by which you measure everything else, that would be the constant for the system that would follow, that would be the first word of the story that's going to be the rest of your life, that is what is deep rooted within you beneath that blackboard. To find that principle. I wrote catalyst for the first one when I came up with it. And that at the time, to me, I preferred that as your true name when you came up with that. When you found that word and it resonated right, that was your true name. Since then, it's evolved just to be a method of finding the principles in one's life that one values the most so that one can put them in a priority. So I was meeting all these people that I was so stuck in my symbolism, I thought, well, they are, but I thought it was more that there are these different aspects of God, that I was meeting these death goddesses, these gods of luck, these gods of chaos, that these were people who were being ridden by a soul that could see them, but they couldn't see, that they had these fragments of these fallen souls inside of them, and that these were the actors in our play, in our drama. This was the narrative that was in my head. So as these aspects of God begin to emerge, they begin to like take on these characteristics of all my books that I grew up on. And I just wanted to set that stage for the next part of the story. So from there we can resume. I die, I drop the pin, I realign. I come out of that with a different understanding of my existence and what I am to do with my days from here forward. The law of two constants, when that name came to me, and like it was that arrow coming from the past to my forehead, and that caused all the things to break apart. The name, having narrowed it down to that name, I now understood the framework of what the thing was it represented. It represented the dynamics of being, the primary archetypes, the two prime dimensions of experience, inside and outside. That there was me and there's you. And that as I go through my experience, I narrow down my focus of you into you for each individual person. And I subdivide a totality into these smaller dynamic frameworks. I build symbols, I build sacred symbols in my mind, cognitive robots that the more I care and more I study a person, the more that those things take on a dynamic life of their own inside of me. What were we talking about?
The law of two constants.
Oh, yeah.
You got the pin realigned. You realized you had a new purpose to your life.
Yes.
What was that new purpose, Reed?
Thank you. The law of two constants told me, we'll get into the full of that later on, but I came out of this with there was a directionlessness to my pursuits. I was doing them because I'd found something new and magical, and I was just chasing the threads. After this event, all those threads coalesced, and the DMT changed for me too, fundamentally. I've never seen the geometry again since that day, ever. It only comes to me in these different dimensional frameworks that I, at the time, and now I understand them differently, but at the time, to me, they were aspects of godhood that were possessing me, and I had names for them. For instance, war. That when I would blast off, one of these I would activate into this framework where everything that I saw or experienced would take on this very specific aspect, and that the attributes of my behavior would alter in this very specific way. War, everything was these like dark green and black tiger stripes, like everything, to the point that if I was in my normal capacity, would have been utterly incapacitated and unable to distinguish between shit, because it was all that. And there was just these chaotic blending of shades that I could barely make out objects, and motion was hard. But I wasn't driving. Something else was driving. And so I could move very well, actually, much faster than I usually would. Like there was this one circumstance in Nevada City that I pulled up to go do an open mic, And I was like, all right, I'm just gonna see what luck of the draw I get here. And I blasted off and I got the war. And I got out of my car and I walk into this bar, and I'm beelining straight through this thing really fast. But there's all these people that I can't recognize, for one, because I can't see their faces, and two, I don't really know anyone there, who are coming up to me and saying, "Hi, oh, good to see you. Good to see you again." Shaking my hand, patting me on the back, and it's just like not saying any words. Just boom, just go straight through it, hop up on the stage, and just I don't know how it looked from the outside, but from the inside, it was this very interesting experience. So that's just one example, but time was this very crystalline state where things, it wasn't like the glittering geometry, because everything took on this aspect of extreme symmetry, of blanket, like nothing. See, my focus couldn't find purchase on anything because the motions had blended into each other to the point they were indistinguishable. But I could still interact with things because I wasn't the one driving. Death. Everything took on this. This was the one that was most clinically precise, because it was these I guess molecular structure. Everything took on these super hard edges. Like if you took an image, you would sharpen, and anything that should have been round instead was like this series of these ticks. But everything became very linear, which once again I understand all these things in different lights now, and so it became this progression of expansion that I was like, okay, I have this thing called law of two constants. I have this phrase that came to my head: the communication of force along nonlinear pathways utilizing binary code operating on multidimensional planes. That I had no idea what the fuck that meant. I had no context for why that phrase would come into my head, and then all these other phrases kept popping into my head, and I was like, all right, so I'm living in a fairy tale, and I love it. I'm just gonna keep diving in further. And so as I chased this, the law of two constants, the idea that there's only me, there's only my environment to my experience, I learned, this is where I learned the tool of polarity is not oppositional, it's dimensional. That everything is a measurement of causality. That there's here and here, but those are just 2 points on a chain that keeps going in either direction. That I can only see these 2 points because I exist in the space between them. And it is the motion along the quantum matrix of these events that forms the experience.
And you're losing me here.
Okay, we can drop all that.
You're getting a little deep on me, Reed. You're getting a little deep on me.
Right. So I'll put it like this: that I realized that, well, I found that I believe that the purpose of life is service. That I began to form what began as a quest for God and turned into the most efficient means I could find of loving myself. And that, all right, fire logic, an argument for the efficiency of honesty. It states that the most efficient way to benefit self is via service to your community. And it states that that's a mathematical certainty if you follow certain principles. And so this became my cause, that I began using DMT actively in this light to take myself, to kill all attachment to the mundanities of what I consider the mundanities of my life, and to engage into this higher spectrum of perception and cognition, and to shape this tool set so that I could do the most extreme, implausible pursuit of service I could, so that I could love myself to that degree. That I could I found I could devise the most ridiculous thing that I could, because it having seen the light, I wanted nothing more. And so I see. I'm trying to figure out how to keep this into the realms of the story and extricate as much of the technical stuff as possible.
So you're going along. You get this message of fire logic, and you're smoking DMT with a bunch of people. At some point, you get possessed by the devil. What's up with that?
So I'm just going to skip ahead to this next stage from where I was currently, because there's not much in the middle, I think, that matters. Just we'll get to the devil part.
Yeah, I'm curious how you go from like, I am in service of self-love, which is like, I get that, I follow that, it all makes sense to me, and then you're like, yeah, but now I'm possessed by the devil.
But that's the part of the story where you come into it, and I'm gonna definitely be going into depth about all that that's coming up. So we come up to the point that's the 1-year anniversary of my two friends dying, the time they drowned, which coincidentally is also the birthday of the girlfriend of the guy who drowned.
You've been smoking DMT continuously this whole year.
Well, I've been smoking DMT for 5 months at this point, because they died in February. At Burning Man of that year, in September 1st, I did for the first time, and then come end of next February, I go to this birthday party / 1-year reunion of their death. So these were all these people that I had thrown all my cards onto the table with, because I honestly didn't really have anyone in my life that I cared about as much as that person. I mean, I do my family, but it's different in a certain light. There's the person who died. And so I was trying to stuff a hole with all the other parts of him that were left. These people who I didn't know. And like, they couldn't really care that much, because I was just some dude they didn't really know, and they had each other. So it was more of my imperative, So I go to this thing, and I'd interacted with these people periodically throughout, and just couldn't connect. Kept trying to do all these extravagant gestures that just crumbled, because I was going about the whole thing wrong, just from this place of grief and intoxication a lot. That I don't know. So I go to this thing, and I've been sitting there honing my tools, and especially when I realized, this is coming up in 2 months. And I sit there and I really started getting into the DMT and like building the tools up. I'm like, I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna connect to these people, this thing. And so I go there, and I bring a bunch of DMT, and basically it rapidly becomes this thing of me just going up from person to person that I wanted to connect to very much so, and not been able to, and saying, hey, let's go smoke some DMT, and I want to get to know you. And so literally all day, from the morning until like 5 o'clock the next morning, I just took people to my car and set and blasted them off, and guided them through their grief for about 3 to 4 hours apiece, and in so doing, guided myself through my grief, and formed this very strong initial seed that showed me all this affirmation with all the stuff I've been doing, and connected me to this community in this way. I decided I'm going to move here. I'm going to move down to Auburn, and I'm going to set up shop. Because as well, the sister of my friend who died wanted to move from Humboldt back to Auburn. She had this new kid, and she needed this help doing so. And I, out of this sense of obligation, got that house that you came to.
Yeah,
I got that. I went and paid for it all for a year, and she was going to come on down and move in, and we were just going to live together there. If like it didn't work out with me, I was going to move at the end of the year, because I know she had a kid, and I wasn't exactly in the lifestyle to fit with that. And so then once I leave Concal and I get into the scenario, that's when things really start getting deep. Because I'm now living right next
They're
door.
not. They're not deep yet. We're still on the surface right now. We about to go deep. Okay, take us deep. Take us deep.
So
I'm
I
ready.
was living right next door to the guy who made the DMT. So it was just there, and I was in this most beautiful house I've ever lived in. It was I was just madly in love with it. I was meeting all these people that were feeling these things inside of me. I had some really amazing DMT, and I was just diving into it, following the storyline that started with the spark at Burning Man, and where the Lucifer came from was that basically what was happening was that there was this cognitive element in my brain that was trying to bridge the gaps between my science and my art. And so there was all this sacred symbolism that I had structured into my brain from reading so much my entire life that it was starting to come to life in this light that I was engaging in a way I'd never engaged it before. And so it was starting to take on this dynamic aspect. And since I had so conditioned these personalities attached to it, they began to become like these divine frameworks of my experience. And they became very specific paths that I went down cognitively, one being Lucifer. So as I was speaking on the whole
So yeah, can I ask you a question real quick? So you were talking about, and this is just to clarify, that after you had this death experience, right, from then on, every time you smoked DMT, you would go into like categories of experience that were very recognizable.
Yes.
And how many of them were there?
There was a regular 6. Sporadically, there would be some very violently different one. Like the most horrific, soul-shattering experiences of my life have been on DMT. Like, bad. Really bad stuff. But yeah.
So I'm just trying to better understand just kind of what you're describing to me. So there was war, which was one element, and that had a specific way that you would act in it. Yes. And it wasn't like you were acting. It was just like once you smoked it, you got into war state, you did war shit, and you lived the war experience. And then the other one was time. And now you're talking about one that is Lucifer.
War shit. It's that my framework of perception would change to take on this very specific pattern. That everything was it. That I couldn't function consciously, but something, my subconscious, was moving me through these motions that perceptually I was too blasted off to even begin to interact with things. But it was just doing it. So I didn't even know what I did in those circumstances.
You know anybody who like experienced you in these states?
Oh yeah, no, I would do this in public. I would do this around people all the time.
So when you're getting in war mode, like how would you be acting from an outside perspective?
I honestly have no idea that when it happened, it would just be in these frameworks that typically came to me when I was not
trying to put words to the ineffable.
Yes.
I love it. It's the job of a poet, my friend.
They would hit me when the moment was opportune for them to hit me. That they would hit me in these times when there was nothing crucially threatening. That they, that like if I was smoking with people in this complicated social structure, it wouldn't emerge because I was too engaged with an immediacy. Or because I used to smoke it when I was driving a lot too. If I was on the highway doing 80, it wouldn't do that to me.
What's it like driving on the highway doing 80 on DMT, which I do not recommend most people try?
I've driven thousands of miles on DMT. It initially it's very interesting because it takes everything and it makes it flat. It takes the 3D projection and makes it 2-dimensional. Completely skews the ratio of what's coming up and like what speed you're going. And so the first time I did it, I pulled over pretty quick. But it just gradually emerged that it became something that I just didn't affect me. It would go into these.
You get used to operating in these states, man. You just keep doing it. Yeah.
I mean,
so okay, let's get back on course. So you got war, and then you got Lucifer. So Lucifer is this other specific state that you would get into when you blasted off on the DMT.
Yes, and it's a state I came to become stuck in. My voice.
Okay, real quick. You have the fire logic, right? And the fire logic is like putting you to service. And is there an interaction? I'm imagining Lucifer interacts with the imperative of fire logic, just because of my judgments, I guess, or maybe not. You proceed.
Well, honestly, the story would have been easier if I didn't have the perspective I have on these things now to frame, because I'm like, I just want to say it differently. What was happening at the time was I was going through the individuation process. They call it the hero's journey. I'm sure you're familiar with it. That I was going through the hero's journey, and that I had this wide array of symbolic frameworks that are used that have a correspondence in my mind with specific aspects of my experience. So as I was going through these complex cognitive developmental processes, my brain was expressing it to me in these lights, because the behavioral model of a being, it has to operate off essentially two triangles of priority. That first, you have the priority of self, where the I is at the top, and then you have the priority of otherness, which the I is at the bottom.
Okay, you're losing me again. So does this have to do with this is Lucifer? I'm high, sorry.
No, yeah, you're good. Yes, it does. It does, because
so Lucifer is an inversion of the principles?
When my mind was when my subconscious was explaining to me the formatics of who I am, not in terms of read, but in terms of my behaviors, what significance they have, and why do you do this, not do that. It expressed it in these terms that I had accessible to it to express it in, and synthesized it. So it needed to tell me that I was a light bringer, that I was man. So like, what brought me to Lucifer was that I was going along this path trying to understand God and reverse engineering Christianity, and certain archetypal symbolisms, like in these biblical structures, were recurrent in my life, and following these logical structures, I came to the conclusion that the Antichrist is not the opposite of the Christ; it's the next Christ, and that Lucifer was the first to fall, and that falling change either occurs gradual from point A to point B, or violently. You're either falling or traveling step by step, and that the first to fall, that I was a reiteration of a soul, that basically the story was telling itself at this point, that was being recurrent to be the next prophet of God, that was the Antichrist, the next Christ.
Yeah, some people would call this going off the deep end.
Yes.
But this is what I love about you, Reed, and I'm just going to speak about it because, madness is one thing, but when you can intellectualize your madness, I'm a fan, because I can get behind all sorts of crazy shit if you provide proper context, and it's taken years for me to get the context for some of the things you're saying, but it's like once you have enough shared context behind, I can start to piece together a way of looking at things where it's like the shit that would initially sound crazy to someone who's just coming along and passing by, I can kind of start to build a framework for and understand how it in fact can be. And highly intellectualized madness.
But I mean, don't get me wrong, it was madness. I am in no disagreement on that. It very much was a deep-seated madness. I just let go and I dove in. I was like, fuck it. I'm going to play with this.
Yeah, I mean, but if you can, here's the other interesting thing about you, Reed, is I've seen you be able to step out of it,
Mm-hmm.
and and that's the key is when if you can dive in and let a demon possess you, but still have the ability to laugh from above it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's then you lose control of it sometimes, as you were saying.
At this point, the majority of my demons, I would say that I've got a firm grip on. They live in there. By demon, I mean a behavioral dimension of linear cognition.
Yes, I understand what you mean.
Yeah, I was saying that for the
audience.
More.
Yeah, another thing that we have a lot of context on is this concept of demons. Like, all right, let me give some context for somebody who might be listening. Right, demon. What is a demon? Okay, so this is how I always think about demons. Right, you have thought loops in your head, right? And loops are patterns that repeat. And when a pattern repeats, it has a recognizable start and finish and distinguishing features that can distinguish it from other patterns, right? So maybe, for example, you have this need to always check your phone and you just notice that as a pattern of behavior. And if you start to recognize what becomes associated with that pattern of behavior, like what are you thinking? What's a better example than checking your phone? Fucking
cigarettes.
Yeah, but
anger as a demon.
The idea is that once you can recognize a pattern and it has distinguishing features, you can begin to ascribe symbolism to those features. So, for example, when I sit down to meditate, right, I have a voice that comes to me very quickly that starts to tell me all the things that I should be doing right now. Call it like a watchdog. I wish it was there more active, but it only shows up there when I'm meditating. It comes like, hey, you got to do this thing. This thing is really important. And I recognize that pattern, like, oh, there's that thing. So I ascribe a characteristic to it. I describe a name to it. So names have a lot of power. Like the old stories always say, once you know a name, you have power over a thing. So you give a thing a name and you recognize it. Maybe you even give it a personality, a visual representation in your brain so that when you close your eyes, you see this thing. And slowly this thing begins to take on a identity of its own because you've created this separation from it and yourself. And thus, we are all demons. our whole subconscious, like Jesus said, we are legion.
Yes, sir. So I came up with a way of describing demon that I like. I want to see what you think about it. Because a pattern is replicable, to me, doesn't make it a demon. To me, picking up a phone only becomes a demon when it's like a mimetic behavior, when it's a behavior you're doing to generate no value output. That it's when you have a circle. You have a sphere of influence, that the replicable pattern that meets with another replicable pattern, and that instead of doing an interdependent expansion of both of their action abilities, integrating into a tool, demons synchronize and impose conformity upon each other, so that they just start to build a tower. So every new one must be supported by the one beneath it, and it doesn't expand the value output of the system with each new one put upon it. That an angle is link in a chain. And so demons are these dimensions that just
that's a little hard for me to visualize myself, but I got a good example for people of a good demon. This is known as the unicorn, and I'm going to write a book one day called Demonology, where I take all these patterns of demons. So I should have more good examples, but again, I'm high. But this is a good one. So the idea of a unicorn, and you can recognize this as and we use this unicorn archetype for certain reasons. Let's see if I can spill this out of my brain right. So, for example, you have a girl, right? You like this girl. You begin to put this girl on a pedestal, and she becomes in your brain something different than what she actually is. You create an image of her, and you romanticize that image. And that image becomes something that you chase, like a unicorn. She becomes the one. And then once you have this demon of the unicorn perspective on somebody, that can often be recognized, and people are like, you're not treating me as I am. And then and the unicorn is like that epitome, that thing that's God, I don't have the words for it. Help me out, Reed. Am I making sense? Am I coming through?
I call that tool the introspector. And it is the mechanism and the cognition, that part that you say that comes to you in meditation to say, do this, do this, do this, that's always circling around you, looking at you, that is your ideal of, it's like the carrot dangled in front of you.
So
You know?
change this thing. Okay,
That perfection you're chasing.
We're getting off the rails. We're getting off the rails here. You are Lucifer. Hit me.
So
Lucifer possessed you.
It's just
unfold.
Now,
tell the story.
Oh god, there's so many convergent side stories that I have to just throw in here real quick. So, like I said, there was all of these people emerging into my life that fit the framework of these fictional stories that I grew up on that were very, very important to me. For instance, as the Farseer series, that it was about this orphan boy who grows up to be this assassin and this wolf that he forms this bond with, as his boy and his wolf, his big white wolf. Guess who shows up in my life?
Yeah, I met that dude.
Yes.
You should back up a little bit. You're getting like cut off on the camera.
Okay. There we go.
Yeah, I met this dude. Crazy. So when I go up to visit Reed, right, he's kicking it with this homie who's got this fucking and this is still the idea that sold me. This is why I'm like I was ready to move up there, because this fucking beast, man, it's like something out of an anime movie or something. It was like fucking, I don't even know how to describe it. Like unreal. And a wolf, not a dog, a fucking wolf, pure white, like literally some majestic creature. And yeah, that was cool. That guy like dedicated his life to taking care of that beast. And we were gonna raise its cubs and get like a litter of like 12 of them and give one cub to like each person in the tribe, and then raise them as a wolf pack, and then have a pack of giant white fucking monstrous wolves that could just yeah. That was quite a dream right there.
Yeah, that dream ended tragically. That's a whole emergent side story that's very relevant to all of it, because I won't get ahead of myself. Will was his name.
Yeah.
Will and Nikki Nakushka.
That's the dog.
Yep. Nikki was
the wolf.
A wolf, but not to me at the time. She wasn't just a wolf, because everything was God aspected to me. She was a divine. She was a god of the wolves. She was a Wendigo. The wind have teeth. That I ascribed a demonology aspect to her, because she could just ghost like through sliding glass doors. That she'd be locked in the house. She'd be outside smoking, and she would open the sliding glass door when it was locked and come out, and then she'd just be standing behind you. And I don't know. She was very unique wolf.
Yeah.
So Will comes from Concal. He's just this very violent, crazy person I knew in Concal who had a very unique point of view and whose sense of humor I appreciated, and that I had entered into this frame in my life to where I was seeking to enable every person I possibly could, typically at my own expense. And so Will, he liked the DMT a lot, and this is where we found this bond. That he entered into my life, and he fit this archetype of this fictional construct so well, and the DMT added that effect, that because I was building this culture within myself with the DMT, this warrior culture of surrender, of death worship in a sense, but not in the sense of glorifying death, but the life aspect of it. You know, you have to conquer your death to live appropriately, I feel. Conquer your fear of it. So he would smoke the DMT with me, and he was someone who could stay on his feet. And so he just became this part of my story that I was telling him that I was this aspect of God, this prophet, this Lucifer. and that over time he became to behave as if that was true in a certain light. I don't know if that was to just to humor me or what, but it was certainly a thing.
Well, I mean, if you start suggesting sorts of things to people, they probably are more inclined to start to see them.
Yes.
And if you're acting like Lucifer, and I'm on DMT, I'm gonna start seeing Lucifer like.
So yeah, I mean, that's another thing. The amount of people who, and I don't even know. This is the honestly big reason that led me to thinking this about myself, is that people would blast off with me and they would tell me that I would change into something that they identified as the Antichrist. This one dude in particular, it's like, yeah, he hit it, he blasted off. He looks at his girlfriend, or reads the Antichrist. She's all, what? He's like, he has these big horns of fire curling out of his eyes up above his head, and I can just know that he's the Antichrist, but that's not a bad thing. That it's misunderstood. And okay. And then like the homies who were staying at that house with me in Auburn, the first time this guy Vinny did it, I don't know if you met him or not. He had a big beard and a big shaggy head. He was like, dude, you were like turned into this 9-foot tall, hulking like shamanic figure with these runes carved all over you that were just moving and alive, and that I kept getting these descriptions from people that I would turn into this thing that was very different and that emanated this brutal magic.
But to be fair, when you blast off, you'd see the same thing in other people.
I would personally.
You said you were starting to see them as incarnations of luck demons and chaos elements.
It's not that I saw them change into that. It's that
you saw that inside of them.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And that I would even do that when I wasn't blasted off. That the narrative carried and it maintained. We can go into the science shit of that later. So.
And what's fascinating to me is how somehow you seem to have dug yourself out of this, and now you have some objective perspective, which is how you went crazy off DMT and came back in. Anyway, keep telling me.
Well, right. So I meet. So at that party I go to, the Death Party Union, I meet these guys, Vinny and Andrew Leonard, and introduce Andrew to DMT. That was one of the most divine experiences I've ever seen in my life. This guy had never done it before. He is this little short mini Hulk. You're just like yoked, but he's got this fro eyes, this really goofy, like on the spectrum person, just like me. I'd say that like, so he's like, how should I do this? I want to make sure it works. So I gave my little spiel. What you're about to do is die. And that this dying that's about to occur is something that you have to want. You have to seek that surrender. It has to be a fire that you peer into it and you see your reflection. You wish to touch hands with the sun. It has to be no reservations. And then once you attain this state inside of you, this yearning for the release that the death of this will bring, you hit it 3 times. Hit it as if it were your final dying breaths that you're gasping to hold on to. And on that third one, you hit it as if that's it, that's done, boom. And that third one will send you there. And I've never seen someone hit a pipe that hard in my life, before or since. This guy had lungs on him.
My heart's racing.
and he's sitting and he's locked into this pose like this instantly. Like, this guy must have went fast because I packed a fat bowl and he hit it hard. And he just went boom. And he sat there for about 20 minutes just giggling. And then he goes, and then he comes back. and he starts to break down these highly complex geometry, like the sort of language and mechanical understanding I would never have guessed from this guy, just due to this how he behaved before. And I don't know, it's this really cool experience for me. But so I meet these guys and they come into my world and they bring a third. This guy's name is Jason. They keep telling me, you got to meet this Jason guy. He's got all these number things that you're totally would get along with him because you're talking about the same stuff. And so eventually they just show up with this guy at my house. Bear in mind, I am full on batshit crazy at this point. I am praying naked on my bed when they show up on the second floor. And I just walk out naked on the porch and it's like, hey, get the fuck up here then. Let me greet you properly as a warrior prophet should. And so I put on my boxers, my bulletproof vest, got my KSG Celtic combat shotgun, put my knife on, and went down in this full ridiculous garb that, like, by the way, there's going to be a lot of really intense things to do with all of that come out of this story as well.
Can imagine, because you're also like strapped to the teeth while you're thinking you're Lucifer.
Yes.
And yeah, and yeah, that was an interesting thing to walk into. I remember, I don't know what stories you want to share, so I won't share any stories you shared with me, but I remember at least one crazy story you told me.
Which one? I mean, I'm gonna share all of them. I think.
Like some like Satanists were like threatening your friends, so you like walked into their house and just
that's the story I'm telling right now.
All right.
Because this Jason guy is what brought it.
Yeah.
So the Jason guy shows up, and he brings with him these diagrams. These the only thing I've ever seen remotely near close to it is like the more complex things from Tesla. He brings these digital reduction wheels of prime sequences and demonstrates this pattern that is this immutable. He showed me this book. It's called The Heartbeat of the Primes, and tells me that there's this thing they've been looking for in mathematics forever that exhibits these properties. He's like, and I found it. It's right here. And I look at it, and I'm like, oh wow, that's fire logic. Because I recognize it immediately in terms of the mechanics of what it does, which has to do with expansion and contraction along universal frameworks of structure. I'm like, holy shit. And I'm sitting there thinking I'm the devil, and he as soon as he tells me that, I was like, yeah, it's really crazy. My entire life I always felt like I'm Jesus. I was like, holy shit, here we are. We got Jesus and the devil. And like I dove into it. And then he tells me, so I'm coming from this really, he talks like this, it's really like hardcore night where, like, Trevor, right? I was like, yeah. Well, they're all devil worshippers. They got me laughing. I was like, ha ha ha, yeah, I'm the devil. And and he's like, so what they're doing is that they're forming this magic ritual. There's 3 of them. They need the 4th. Well, no, there's 4 of them. They need the 5th, but it comes in terms of 1 and 4, which coincidentally is the exact same structure that I had just set up with these people. And in terms of, I had in my mind this fictional construct that units of magic, of manifestation, come in these sets of 5, with the 5th and then the 4. And that this offsets these, and that this was something that you had to set up with people. And he told me that these guys are trying to set up the exact same thing with him as the 4th to replace JP, the guy who drowned, one of the ones who drowned. And that he's like, and they claim they have his soul in a stone. They have a soul stone of JP, and they're trying to get me to join them in their devil worship and all that.
God, dude, I can't even say how jealous I am that you've had this experience like this. Like I'm willing to go a little mad to have this crazy of a Jesus comes to your fucking door with all the answers and mathematical formulas, and then the Satanists have just keep going, just keep lay it on me, lay it all on me. So
the whole thing was the time of my life.
Yeah, I can imagine, man. It's hard to. That must be a hard thing to walk away from, which is one of the reasons I'm like really proud of that you're doing something else right now, and I'm sure you'll go back to it because the mission is not over. But it's good to get perspective,
Yeah, we have a lot of thoughts on that specific topic that we'll get to later.
Yeah, no, I want to finish the story.
So he, and here's the other turkey turk. there's so many stories that are going concurrently because I had all these relationships with these different people at this time that were fresh and that were intense and crazy. And that like one day this one thing would happen, this other thing would happen, but there was huge arcs that I'm gonna have to kind of interweave them. That there's this girl who was in my world. That this story, which I will tell some other time, it's a little explicit, is insane. But she had this boyfriend who was her fiance that she explained to me that she had just broken up with him and that he was very jealous. And oh, you may even know this guy from Chico. What God was his name? DJ fucking AZ Red Smoke.
Nah.
No, okay. And that he wanted to kill me because of he was jealous and whatnot. And that I knew that Hawaiian Lion. Hawaiian Lion was this other guy's name, who happened to be the bass guitarist from Bad Brains as well.
So you got DJ Azam, what'd you say?
AZ Red Smoke.
You got DJ AZ Red Smoke in the Hawaiian Lion on your ass. Yeah. You're Lucifer with a cult full of Satanists.
So Hawaiian Lions was the bass player from Bad Brains, which is like one of the most famous like punk, funk, whatever bands from back in the day. George Clinton, like they're all associated with that. But they're all renowned devil worshippers. And so he's the one who's supposed to be the fifth, who's like this piece of shit. I cannot stand this guy. But he's also best friends with AZ Red Smoke, who this girl's been feeding me these stories. This guy wants to kill me. And so I'm like, and then Jason's showing me these texts that this guy Trevor's been sending him, which Trevor's a whole another story, that there's something like, if the Pope gets killed in the woods, does anybody care? You know, text like that. He's like, dude, they want to kill me. So I'm just like, all right, fuck it. I had the 6 hour Equinox 45. That was my go-to sidearm. Love that gun. I had my stick. I usually carried about 3 or 4 knives at that time. So I just was like, all right, you guys stay here. I'm gonna call this guy up, and we're gonna talk to these fuckers. And so Trevor answers, and I'm like, yeah, you know, I just want to come talk to you because talk to Jason. There seems to be some issues. And he gets all weird. He's like, all right, well, I'll meet you at Kmart. I'm like, all right, whatever. Go meet him at Kmart. And he starts like, oh, so what's going on with him? Like, I don't understand what the problem is. And so I explained, like, the situation. And then I look at him, I was like, so I heard you've been trying to summon demons. Hi. Okay. So now that you have me here, what would you like? Yes. Again, he was like, what the fuck? And so then I launched into my whole thing about, you know, yeah, this is who I am. This is what I'm doing on this earth. This is my turkey. And I will rip your fucking intestines out of your body and feed them to you. Fucking, you know, but now I want to go talk to your people. But at the same time, I'm doing this very conversationally, smiling, making it a fun time because I'm having a lot of fun with it. Again, at the same time, I'm explaining to him the mechanics of the whole fire logic thing because I'm breaking down what I've been told that they're doing, in terms of my understanding of it and how I believe it works, and the things that I'm telling them that I'm seeing that, well, what I'm being told that they're doing wrong, and he gets very enticed by that. Calls his dudes up. And this brings me over there anyway. Again, and so go over there, and we pull up this other guy, this little short hobbit fuck, whose house it was, comes out, and I pull up. I got the gun in my lap like I usually do when I'm driving at this time, and I open the door, and I was like, oh, hey, what's up, guys? You know, and I unload the gun while they're both standing at the door right there. I just unload it, put it out there on the seat, and just take my stick and just get out. And so we go up, and we're on the porch, and Hawaiian Lion's inside. And I don't know why he wouldn't come out. I don't know if it's related to me or not. I don't know what they communicate to him, but there's like, oh, he doesn't want to come outside. Come in and see him. And I was like, I don't want to go in your house. We're cool. And then just proceed to go through these series of very curious dramatics. Just having a lot of fun. Just fucking not giving a fuck. Like, so, I do love you guys and all, because there was a relation to them via all the social things with the people dying, and they were part of the family that were straying. They were straying because they were getting into shady shit no matter what. And it was like, so I the only fear I have left in me is that I might die before I get to end all of you with my bare hands. Shit like that, like, and it's just this, they're just like going from this enticement to the other shit I'm saying, to like this not knowing what to make of the other shit I'm saying. But
yeah, because you're just lacing them with verbal wizardry, and their brains can't compute it.
I wasn't even trying to go, I'm just letting this thing do its thing and just having fun and just like getting into it as if it was exactly what I was telling myself it was. I believe
you had a demon steering the wheel because you believed it was true. It was true.
Yeah.
It's like what is truth? If you thought that a demon was running the ship and a demon was running the ship, a demon was fucking running the ship.
My voice even changed for a good month, maybe 2, and the way I talked changed. Everything changed about me. I started talking really like hoarse. I can't even do it now. And
just to let you know, I got to cut out of here in like 10 minutes.
Cool.
So let's cut this story, wrap up the Satanists, and then we'll fucking get on with it in episode 2. Well, episode 3.
Basically, left it at that. It's just like, so this is it with him. You have to stop everything you're doing. You cannot contact him again. Like, boom. I will murder you all if you carry on forward. and then I left, and then that certainly got around and caused a lot of ruckus with a lot of people, and those, even though we parted, this like, oh yeah, let's certainly connect again in the future is what they're saying to me. After that, they immediately like blocked me on all of their means of access and shut down. And I just haven't been able to find them or see them since. Like, I looked for them actually for a time, but yeah, I don't know where the fuck they went. That was that Satanist story.
That Satanist story, he says.
Yeah. So yeah, let's call that a wrap on that one.
That's beautiful. Yeah, you got a lot of stories, man. We could get a lot of episodes out of this shit. I'm curious. Yeah, I'm curious where it went from there. I mean,
I spent a good 6 months living in my car between the Bay, Auburn, and Chico, but spending a lot of time in the valley there, Stockton and shit, being homeless, having lost everything, but having all of my guns, not having a license, no registration, no insurance, driving around high as fuck on all sorts of drugs, putting myself into some insane situations.
Yeah.
Unscathed through some insane situations that gave me a lot of very magical experiences. And no one got hurt in any of the immediacy of any of the thing. It was really miraculous. Like,
yeah, because of course the fear is like all the things that could have happened to you, right?
I don't even know, because I'm looking back and I can't think of any way that things could have worked out the way they worked out unless there was some sort of additional element to it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Like
awesome,
literally, I have shown up, because like I put people at my property in Conca while I was gone. I've shown up the moment they had someone tied up in the cabin and were about to shoot him in the head. Showed up the moment before that and walked in, and fucking, it was like this. I had just driven 6 hours from Humboldt, showed up at fucking midnight. They didn't expect it, type things. Like, series of these life-turning, saving moments of just this ridiculously serendipitous timing that just... Anyway, I'll let you go. Thank you.
Yeah. Good, brother. I fucking love it. Let's talk again soon. I'll get this one edited and uploaded. We got the other one about 3/4 of the way there. And yeah, man.
All right.
To be continued.
Thank you.